The other thing was just quickly on the giving most, if not all, of the cash flow to the seller to make the deal, viable. What about that safety margin? You know how Bigger Pockets or whomever always talks about the anywhere from 1 to 300 per month. You have to have that going towards emergency repairs and the unexpected. Would you
Yeah.
be willing to forego that and just break even for a few months or a few years if it's that sweet a deal?
Okay, so let's first break down the whole 1 to 300 a month. So right now on this property, the way that, so we talk about 10%, for management, we talk about 5% for maintenance, or 5% for, depending on the asset, what it is that you need to do. The most common thing for easy numbers is if it's going to rent for $2,500 a month, multiply that by 30%, and it should cover relatively everything. So $750 a month of your cash flow ate up in maintenance, repairs, capital expenditure, or maintenance, repairs, capital expenditures, management, and the like, right? And then so what you see out there in order to buy like really strict investments is to make sure that you hold back those funds. But there's another way to go about this in a way that makes a little bit more sense on especially properties that you flip, and that's to look at it by the total amount of capital expenditures and divide it by the cost of the expenditure. And so on this property, it's going to have a new roof. The kitchen's been done. So then we have to worry about appliances. There is no ACs, it's just window units. Those are very minimal. And so what we're really looking at is roughly $3,500 for appliances, which might come up. I don't know if they're new appliances or not. If you're to do new appliances, most likely you wouldn't on an asset like this in general. But $3,500 a month or $3,500 in typically every 6 years or so. So divide that by 6 and divided by 12 is roughly $50 a month that you need for that capital expenditure. And of course, they could last way longer than that. And of course, you could buy much cheaper non-brand new appliances. You're not going to buy brand new appliances every 6 years in your rentals. But just as an example, that's $50 a month. Those window unit ACs are about, let's say they're $500 a piece. And honestly, at some point, it might make sense to put split units in there instead of window ACs. However, let's just say it's the Windows ACs, they're $500 and those things last, let's say even only every 3 years. So divided by 3, divided by 12 is another $14 a month. So we have 50 plus 14. We got to think about what other CapExes do we have on this property. The only other one would be the roof, and the roof would need replaced in probably, let's say 20 years from now, and that would cost about $8,500. So 8,500 divided by 20 divided by 12 would be another $35 a month. So 35 plus our 40 plus our 14 is about $90 a month pulled back for capital expenses. From a maintenance perspective, this really depends on what kind of rental it is, whether it's a long-term rental, whether it's a B or so forth. And so for this case, I would say that maintenance-wise, they're only $700 a piece. I know rehabbing them will only cost me about 30 grand for both of them, like a full rehab. So for paint on a turnover, I know that I have $1.50 times 700, so it's about $1,000 to repaint that place, and most likely that's going to be in the form of their deposit, not out of pocket in many scenarios if I have to repaint the whole thing. How these are things to consider. Let's just even say that is that, and so we'll do $1,000 divided by 12 is about $83 a month. So let's add that $83 onto our 90. Leaves us at 90 plus 83 leaves us at about $173. Let's even bump that up to $180 a month that we would need to hold back per unit in order to actually handle capital expenditures and turnover once a year. if turnover happens once a year, right? And so I'm not
sorry,
so
sorry, Tyler. That 30% number, that's 30% of what the property produces that you divided, or to get your total capital expenditure, your quick reference on your capital expenditures. I missed that part.
Yeah, the quick reference on not capital expenditures, but on everything is typically 30%, right? It's including 10% for property management. A lot of times people do between a 7 and 10% for vacancy, 5% to 10% for capital expenditures, depending on the situation with the roof and right now and the AC right now, and then 5% for maintenance and repairs. And so typically 30% right off the top from your gross revenue. So if it's renting for $1,500 per side, that's $3,000 a month. 30% off the top of that is what people typically are paying out for maintenance or holding back for repairs. But when you have a property that's fully rehabbed and stuff like in your case, Mark, you had a rental or a flip that you just turned into a rental, you don't have any CapExes. You're not going to have CapExes for the next 6, 7, 8, 12, 15 years, So you don't need to be as aggressive with this. And where I got this model from, by the way, is a gentleman that I know locally here that owns, he owns 50 free and clear, properties in the hood, right? So it's all like Section 8 type properties and stuff. And I asked him, I was like, dude, how do you buy these properties and not get ate up by all of your CapExes? And he said, well, here's the thing is when I buy these properties, I redo them right away. So I buy them and I rehab them all the way. And then I know that they're all set. They're all good. They will have long lasting. I put, either tile or LVP in, or these things, I don't put carpet in any of them. And so he standardizes the units to where they're long-term. They have longevity, right? I know that these duplexes have tile in them, not carpet. And so these things make it to where we can, have these properties for without having to put a bunch of maintenance and repairs and CapExes on them. And so he said, if I know I have one that has a hot water heater, and I know that I have one that has a roof and it's a shingle roof, and I know all these things, I just know automatically I'm not going to have to replace those for X amount of years. And if I'm not going to have to replace them for X amount of years, and it's going to cost me another $15,000 to redo the whole place again, then I'm just going to divide that by 15 years, $15,000, and that's going to resort to be $80 a month. And so boom, that's my number. And he self-manages. Once you have a certain amount of properties, you self-manage anyway, and because it makes sense financially to do that. Not yourself, but you hire somebody to do the management for you. And so you have an in-house. Like this gentleman, he has one in-house property manager and he has 3 maintenance guys in-house, the guy that owns these duplexes. And so that case makes his cost way lower. And so you're looking at your portfolio is in fact a business, right? Rather than looking at it like it's just cash flow. Once you get a certain amount of properties, it should in fact be a business, right? Your portfolio is no different than owning a 130 unit building, right? It needs a manager, it needs a maintenance guy on house, it needs all these different things. And so what I'm doing here is I'm showing how instead of looking at hey, I need 30%, I know that I need $180 a month for maintenance and repairs. And I know that I need 10% for management. However, I'm going to be self-managing it. So, that would be, I'm still counting it into my numbers. But to answer Al's question here, 180 plus the, $250 or $300 a month for maintenance, that's $500 a month essentially, right? That should be being held back. In the period of time that I'm giving him all the cash flow. Okay, but instead that $500 over 12 months is $6,000 a year times 5 years means that there should be $30,000 set aside for repairs and maintenance and all that other kind of stuff, including property management, by the way. That would be being paid out. So really from a maintenance perspective, let's just base it off that. 180 times 12 times 5 years, that's $10,800, okay? So $10,800 over the course of 5 years, what I'm telling myself is, hey, if I do that option, if I give him 50% down and I give him $2,600 a month until the other 50% is paid off, which is essentially all the cash flow, there's $10,800 that if a surprise happens, there's up to $10,800 most likely that I would have to come to the table with over the course of the next 5 years, if in fact that happens. And so for the sake of the asset, I would be willing to accept that. Okay, I would just add that at the top of the numbers from a cash on cash return perspective, right? So I just say, okay, instead of 10,000, instead of 285,000, it would be 296,000, right? Is what the total purchase price is, because I'm holding that on the top side, because I'm not gonna fund that into an account from the beginning, right? I'm not gonna just put that in there. Or that could be something I do. I could say, okay, well, when I close on the property, I do a personal loan to the asset of $10,800 in order to have the reserve in the account. And then once I start making money, that gets paid back to me first, and then it starts building up from there. So there's a lot of ways that you can go about it. But the interesting thing is the idea of doing 140,000 down and then 140,000 over however many years it takes to pay off that at $2,600 a month. I think it was 5 years. Then you have $140,000. You basically then bought the property for $140,000, and you are kind of crossing your fingers that nothing huge happens in 5 years from now. And that's what this gentleman was getting at. It's like, hey, listen, why don't you just give me $2,600 a month until the other 140 is paid off, and basically you've got a property that you just bought for 140 grand. Now, the downfall to that is what could that 140,000 that I paid for that property 50% down on, what could that 140,000 create over 5 years, right? It could create a lot. However, again, we got to account into the fact that there could be 2 more duplexes built on this property. And this property can go being a non-cap rate factored property to a cap rate factored property. And that's huge. When you can add 2 more assets and it's a 6-unit property rather than a 2-unit property, a 6-unit property at a 5 to 7 cap, it can go where I have $140,000 that I left in it for 5 years, to building 2 more assets, to being at 230 a piece, so 460 plus the 140, 460 plus 140 would mean that I would have $600,000 total into this property for this 6-plex now property, and the property would be worth $1 million plus, right? And so over the course of that 5 years that they're getting their rent, basically that 140,000 that I bought was so I have the dirt to build 2 more duplexes, so that in 5 years from now, there's this huge change that happens. It goes from me making nothing, right, to me having $1 million plus valued property for 600 grand.
Within 5 years, you figure?
Within that 5 years, right? And so that's why you got to kind of look at it like developmental deals, like they got to be looked at a lot different when you have the ability to develop on a property, right? And so in 5 years, it'll go from me having 140,000 cash to me having 2 duplexes built that I would either do cash on or I would do financing. I'm not quite sure which one. Either way, after those 2 are built, which would be done within 3 years, I would have those would start cash flowing. The original duplex loan, the 50% one, would end up having itself resolved over 5 years. And in that 5-year period in time, or sooner, honestly, depending on the situation, now that I have a property that's worth $1 million plus, I can refinance out at the 600,000 and now have 8,000 a month in cash flow, but a $600,000 mortgage, which would cost me what, fucking 4,000 a month. So I can then have net, $3,500 to $4,500 a month instead of, and have $0, in it at the end of the day, and still have 500,000 in equity.
Okay, that does make sense. I understand that now.